Good evening, everyone. I've had a couple requests. Some folks interested in the books that I buy. I buy a lot of books. It's kind of like vinyl. I think I got a bookshelf right here. This here is all my books that deal with music. And then on the main floor, I got another 4 bookshelves of the classics of art, of architecture. And on the top floor, I have a couple more bookshelves in my office of business, but then fiction, travel, lots. So obviously, I like to read. Read and music are two of my favorite things. So I'm going to show you some of the music books. I was asked what kind of music books do I like, what have I been reading, or what do I find interesting. So to do that, I have put on my official, this is the Mr. Rogers sweater. This is the official reading sweater. I've had it for like 1 billion years, but I do have that. Kind of gives me a college professor look. Out in the other room, I have also books in my main record area. Those are more of the Rolling Stone reviews, all music reviews, lots of different. I have soul review, blues reviews, jazz review, so a lot of different books that look at all the different music that's been put out and giving reviews on it. This is one, though, I had out there. It's called Encyclopedia of New Wave, and I picked this up a few years ago, and it really looked at the various New Wave artists. Brief bio. I mean, it does not get in depth, but it's just kind of fun to look at, and it has pictures, and who doesn't like nice pictures? Nice, clean. It looks like the 80s, doesn't it? Lots of color, lots of pop on there. So that was a neat one. And then a number of years ago, someone gave me this one, 1,000 record covers, that I've always just enjoyed looking at, to see the different record covers out there. So it isn't like something you sit down there and read, but it's a fun book. So some of these are way up high, so I'll just grab a few of these as we go, and hopefully they don't fall on my head. Some of the more interesting ones, okay? This one here is by Anthony Guest, The Last Party. This covered Studio 54 and really looked at all the partying that went on in Studio 54 and really the history of the different discos within New York City. Fascinating read. I just finished up this one. I showed that just recently on my channel, The Kingdom of Zydeco, looking at the history of Zydeco music, where it started, its roots, how it's changed, and where it's going today. Nice read. This one was nice. This was by Amanda Petrush. I can't pronounce names. Everybody knows that. It Still Moves is the name of this book. And this one, they went and they looked at people like Johnny Cash, Wilco, Iron and Wine, Presley, Willie Nelson, Robert Johnson. It's stories about them. As this person traveled around the country trying to find a little more information about these various bands. And I really like that because it's like a travel log along with, stuff about music, and we get to learn a little bit more about it. This was a neat one, The Secret History of Rock and Roll. And this was by Christopher Knowles, The Mysterious Roots of Modern Music. So I really kind of dug deeper into this. Where did everything come from? How did it all start? It says on the back, it traces the development of rock's most popular genres, such as punk, heavy metal, and explains exactly why stores like Morrison were called modern Dionysians. I'm sure I said that wrong. And again, it just looks at some of the different stars, but also, what brought about, or, what was happening in their lives. Hold on. Picked up this one last year. This is by David Brown. I can say that name. It's called Fire and Rain. It really looked at 1970 and looked at the Beatles, Simon Garfunkel, James Taylor, and Crosby, Stills, and Nash. Why some were disappearing, others were coming onto the scene, and talked about all of them and how they intertwined in each other's lives. A fascinating book. And this one was kind of interesting. I picked up a few years ago. The Adventures of the MTV VJs, and talked about that. Think about the influence that these people had upon our lives. It was pretty impactful if you were from the 80s. couple more cool ones I have up there. Punk, the definitive record collection of it. Kind of like that 80s one I showed you. This one looks at punk, a lot of pictures, but talks about it, goes in depth, more into depth about the different groups. This was done by Stephen Colgrave. Most every single one of these I picked up at Half Price Bookstore. Once in a while I'll buy something online, but generally every time I go to Half Price Bookstore, before I even go to any music, I go to the music biographies. Gimme Indie Rock, 500 Essential American Underground Recordings from 91 to 96. Helps me keep up with what's going on. Again, I find that, I'm sorry, it's from 1981 to 1996. Fascinating read, and really helps me as I look at things. And then this one, Our Band Could Be Your Life. This one looked at, again, it's 80s groups, and this was by Michael Azerrad. And it specifically looked at Mission of Burma, the Minutemen, Black Flag, Ooskadoo, Minor Threat, The Replacements, Butthole Surfers, Sonic Youth, Big Black, Fugazi, Mudhoney, Beat Happening, and Dinosaur Jr. Incredible read. Very interesting book. Not really in pictures, just read, read, read. Big thick one too. I bought this one probably about 8-9 years ago. It's beginning to yellow, so I don't know if you can find that thing around anymore. One other one I have up there, Unknown Legends of Rock and Roll. And this is by Richie. Why can't authors just have freaking names that you can pronounce? Why can't they just all be called Brown? Richie Brown, Stephen Brown, Utenberger. This came off the CD. And so again, it really looks at profiles 61 different musicians. They look at, originators, Lost Britain Invaders, Out of the Garage, Psychedelic Unknowns. It looks at punk pioneers, post-punk hybrids, lo-fi mavericks, just a variety of different people. Really great book. There's the Great Society, talks about that band. Well, there's 61 different bands it talks about. Pictures on here. And what really made it nice at the very end, you get a CD, so you can listen to a lot of the music. Great read. When I look here, this was a nice one. Punk, the whole story, a nice hardback. Okay, I mean, I have an absolute love of punk music, so I try to pick up when, if they got something out there, I'm really picking this stuff up. Good book, and I got an advertisement in there. This one, Debbie Harry did the forward on. This came from Mojo magazine. Mojo. History of Elektra Records. You can find some of these periodically. This was a newer pickup from Half Price Bookstore. And so I always like, I find these fascinating when you can look at a certain record label and get a better understanding of their history and how they did stuff. The Art of the LP. Beautiful, beautiful book. Just goes into all the artwork. Gives explanations of it, talks about some of the artists with it. Isn't that gorgeous? Just a fun book to look at. Beautifully done. Excellent. And I'll just put that back in later. A lot of you have had this one. It came out recently. Now you can buy it real cheap. I paid a lot more for it. Dust and Grooves. Again, looking at the artwork, looking at the record, looking at record collecting. You can find this one out there now at half-price bookstores, and a lot of them really inexpensive. I just love looking at people's record collections. I like the vinyl community. Here was Babylon Burning, from punk to grunge. It really traces how The history from punk music up to grunge music and going through all the different bands on there. Fascinating read. This one was by Clinton Highland. Just say Clinton Brown. All right, makes my life easier. PBS had a series, American Epic. If you've never seen that, well worth taking a look at. It looks at roots music. Jack White had a big hand in this. And so this was the book that went along with the PBS series. You can find this one really cheap and inexpensive out there. Well worth looking at. Some of these on Amazon you can pull up and they don't cost a lot. This was one just recently. There was a riot going on. And this looks at, again, the late 60s, early 70s, what was happening as far as society and how music was playing, a part of it, from Woodstock to Altamont to into the 70s to the Ohio Massacre. Music's part in history. This was written by Peter Doggett. It's a nice thick read on here, but it really gets more into some of the politics and things. And again, you can learn stuff. Nice book on Motown. This was by Gerald Posner. Looks at the history of Motown. I also got Barry Gordy's biography. So you could compare his biography to this guy's thoughts about Motown. You know what? They don't always match up. There's some different stories out there. Can you believe that? Who would have thunk it? Favorite here, Please Kill Me. This here, again, deals with history of punk rock. Looks at before the Pistols and the Clash. Kind of Malcolm McLaren talks about him, but just gets into what happened with punk music, how it all started, how it all got going. Wonderful read on there. And I got all kinds of stuff of these. Oh my goodness. This is from McNeil and McCain. Please Kill Me. History of Casablanca Records. Always interesting. Stuff about Donna Summer's fascinating. Obviously, Kiss is a part of this, and so it looks through the history of Casablanca. Here's the history of the house that Train built. So this looks at the history of Impulse Records, and goes through Impulse Records and how Coltrane's influence was huge on it. But it's really kind of fascinating. They showed a lot of the different albums. It talked about how Impulse, made it. I haven't read that one. Never a Dull Moment. You can find this right now in half-price bookstores. This looks again at the year of 1971, the year that rock exploded, when you think of what's happening with Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and everything going on there. Things were really beginning to change. This is written by David Hempworth. I haven't read this one, but I'm looking forward for it. On Highway 61 by Dennis McNally. It traces the Southern African Americans as they moved up into the cities, especially to Detroit and Chicago, and how the blues had started. So, what kind of music there was down in the South, and how as they moved north it began changing, and the reasons why they moved. So it looks at the social impact of it along with the music. I have not read this one yet. Again, it's at Half Price Books is where I found it, and just one of those I can't really wait to dig into. But I got a lot of books to read. And this was a recent one. This is by John Doe, from X, and it looks at Under the Big Black Sun, L.A. Punk, the history of L.A. Punk. How fun could that be? Vinyl Richie, if you're watching this, I don't know if you are, but I'm sure you must have that book. Martin Scorsese, a while back, did a thing on the blues. And so he had a, I don't know how many parts it was on PBS. So this was the companion book to the PBS series. It was a great series. I truly enjoyed it. It's a musical journey. You can still find this, again, Half Price Books. What else? Love Goes to a Building on Fire, 5 years that New York City changed music forever. So this looks at the New York punk scene and how it was changing. You know, you had, the Talking Heads, Richard Hell and the Voidoids, Television, Blondie, how all that worked within the 5 years, in the late 70s, basically kind of the mid-70s of what it looks at. This is by Will Hermes. Not sure if I'm sure you can still find this, but if you're really, again, interested in that punk, especially the New York punk, really great insight on this one. Oh, you got to have this one. Oh, ABBA. Yes, look at that. The official photo book of ABBA. It was dirt cheap, half-price books. So now I have, yes, I like ABBA. Come on, I'm from the 70s. ABBA, they were the hottest women out there. Wow. But I liked them for the music, not for that. Please, don't get me wrong. Different by... So I actually have this all kind of... Believe it or not, it really is organized, okay? Those are just more general history of music. Then I go into my biographies. I got Greg Allman. Here we got, who is that one? Oh, another, the Allman Brothers. I have Greg Allman, one of the Allman Brothers. Ian Anderson. That was a neat read. I really love Jethro Tull. It was kind of fun to get into that. This was by Brian Rabley. And I haven't seen a lot of books on Jethro Tull, at least not in the States. Louis Armstrong, really fun biography on this one. I want to read it again. You can probably find a lot on him. Terry Treachout, Terry Treachout, for the life and history of Louis Armstrong. Oh, jeepers. Down here, got a Beethoven. Haven't read this one yet. It's on my list. I have a couple Beatles. History of Black Sabbath. I just recently read this one. I talked a little bit about on one of my videos. By Mick Wall. You can find this half-price bookstore. Again, pretty good price. Really kind of interesting. The author did not much care for Terry Iommi, but kind of liked Ozzy Osbourne. So, a little swayed. I have Bowie's biography along with Angela Bowie. She did her own book on that. So you can compare them. Some books on James Brown. This is one I just picked up at Half Price Books for only $4. The Crazy Life of Arthur Brown. Haven't read it yet. Polly Marshall wrote it. I have one Arthur Brown, but now I have a whole book about him. So we're going to just find out a little bit more about his crazy life one of these days. I have a few different books on Johnny Cash. This was one I really liked. This was my favorite Johnny Cash one, The Life of Johnny Cash. And it's by... Robert Hilborn. Yeah, again, they just have a few pictures in these, but it becomes this was a really interesting and a really nice read. Read this one recently. This is the biography of Alex Chilton. Fascinating book. I think you can still find this at Half Price Books. Holly George Warren wrote this book. Really gets into it deep. You can see how thick it is. You can learn quite a bit about him. Clash, George Clinton. The Phil Collins one I have not read, but I heard really good reviews on this. $6.97. He's a funny guy. He's a pretty funny guy, so I'm told. So I've heard this is a great read, really fascinating. Haven't got it read yet. The Elvis Costello. I have an autographed copy upstairs of this one, so I had to go buy another one because you can't read the autographed copy. You got to leave it pristine. So Half Price Books, $6.98 that I got this thing for. Fascinating, man. This is, again, fairly funny book. I have 3 different books on Miles Davis. Oh my God. Well, look at that. This is how you waste money. I had the hardback of this. I just bought the freaking paperback of it. Hey, got an extra book. This does happen to me, believe me. Take that out of the bookshelf. This was a beautiful one. This is on Nick Drake. And this is... can't even find the author. There we go. John Murray wrote this. And... it really kind of goes in depth on Nick Drake. You see advertisements, lots of pictures. Fascinating man, a sad, tragic figure. It really gets into all the songs, what was going on, the thoughts, and lots of different notes. A very, very comprehensive look at the man, the artist, Nick Drake. And I picked up this one recently too. I haven't read this one yet, Marianne Faithfull. And this is Rizzoli. Look at it, it doesn't even really say who in the hell wrote it. It's more pictures, just about her. A lot of pictures. You know, Marianne, Marianne Faithfull had a tragic life, and things didn't always work out for her. Mick Fleetwood, Barry Gordy I have in here. This thing's really getting long. I apologize. Herbie Hancock. I'm just trying to find. This was a really good book I picked up. Ooskadoo, The History of Ooskadoo, the story of the noise pop pioneers. I really enjoyed that one, along with this one here. This is The History of Jesus and the Mary Chain Gang, Barbed Wire and Kisses, and that's by Zoe Howe. Really digs deep into that. Jerry Lee Lewis put out a fantastic book. This was, wow, what a guy. This is by Rick Bragg, and you can find a variety of different books on Jerry Lee Lewis. Well worth reading. Here's another one. I have an autographed copy, so I bought the paperback to read. And this is actually a really funny book, Anger is an Energy, the autobiography of John Linden, My Life Uncensored, and it really is uncensored. Fascinating stuff. And this is a really funny book. Half-price books again. Moby's Porcelain. This guy's a comic. It was so fascinating though to listen to his life and what he wanted to do and the kind of where he ended up and just the things that have gone on in his life. This is a damn nice person. I'd like to meet Moby. You know what? He just deserves a hug, I think. Good read. History of Bob Mould. Again, after Ooskadoo, you have to read this by Michael Azerrad. Neat book. Half-price book, $7.99 on that one. Buck Owens, I have Sam Phillips, Tom Petty. There's some Pink Floyd ones, Lou Reed. Here was a nice one, The Replacements. You can kind of see where a lot of my love's at on here. And this was written by Bob Meyer. Again, one group that could really self-destruct. On there, Keith Richards is in here, Santana, Linda Ronstadt, she had a really good one. This was a great read on Phil Spector, One Crazy Dude. This is by Mick Brown, half-price books. Really one crazy guy. I mean, he made some great music with it. Oh my God. Nice book on the Talking Heads. Got this a long time ago. David Bowman really gets into that group. The Wilson sisters. I have 3 on Neil Young down here, and a couple on YouTube. I'm always on the lookout for new music books because my love of music, it goes with understanding music, and I like the history aspects of it. And, you know, when you watch the channel, obviously you see I talk a lot about little stories and that because I pick this stuff up because that's just my thrill of music. It's, you know, I like listening to it, but I like learning about it. So that's some of my stuff. I really thought this would be a 10-minute video, and look at that, it's 23 minutes. So for those of you, I hope I showed you what you wanted to see and some of the ones that I really love. You know, my bookcase is full. I've filled out there, so I am ready for my second bookcase down here in my CD room. So looking forward. I just have to get around to buying that, along with another vinyl one. So hey, thanks for taking a look at these books. I know they're not for everyone, but for me it's an important part of my music. Have a great evening. Thanks for watching.